Hello everyone, welcome back to Witch in the Woods. So last time we had to end because of video length midway through creating the anti-death machine, or at least the prototype of it. It doesn't have all of its support systems just yet. And we got our first death protection puppet. We also have our first tag lock, bound to my person. So once again, we need to come down here and tell the ME interface to always have one of those there. And then we want to tell this to always have one in there as well. And now that we have the ingredients, we can also tell this crafting thing what to make. So just do that. It doesn't craft anything, it doesn't show you what it's going to craft, it'll only do it once it's actually there. So if we toss the materials into the system, then it should happily spit us out a death protection puppet bound to us. I'm just going to turn this top translocator off for the moment, just so we can actually see it happen in there. Loop. Alright, what's my clipboard saying? Working on the anti-death machine. Okay, lovely. So, if I just search that so we can see it go out. So, tag lock, already gone. We saw it flicker just over there on the left-hand side here. This went to full. So, if I come down here, then we see that there's nothing in here. There is a tag lock kit in here. Perfect. And as soon as I put this death protection puppet, it's going to craft it. So if I do that again, and keep your eye on that top, just next to this bow, if you just keep an eye on that ME drive, it should flicker to orange again. Yep, and it's out. And that gives us one death protection puppet bound to me. Now, you might be wondering why we have to do it this way. The answer is that ME has some really weird wonkiness with witchery data values, as near as I can tell. You know when we search death protection puppet, it comes up with the entire list of all puppet crafting recipes. It's sort of a connection to that. So if you give it a recipe of combine death protection puppet with tag lock kit to make that, and then tell it to craft that, it will get stuck making the death protection puppet, because I think it gets caught in a loop. It's weird. But yeah, so that's why we have to do it this way. That's why we have this external system. And later we'll have the Big Mac, and I can tell it how to... We'll have the Big Mac. Wow, apparently the well has its own fast food restaurant. And then I can give that a recipe to make all of the different chains to get to the puppets and the death protection puppets and all sorts. And I can tell it how to make Drop of Luck. I can give it a distillery to make the concentrated evil and all sorts. So this will just be able to happily spit along, and we won't have to worry in the slightest. Now, of course, there is some gold involved in that, and we have not too much gold in here, 36 bars. And over here, we have about a stack and a half of gold ore, which will be doubling at present. But a potential flaw is that somebody could basically massacre me for hours on end and we'll burn through all of our gold. Which is why we're going to be having a large, or at least something like this size, maybe a step smaller, I'm not sure. But suffice to say, a gold crop. We'll be doing the same with diamonds and all sorts, and basically all of the things that we need, so that we can auto-craft this. Now gold essence, if I just go to that, yep, there it is, that's what we get from it. If we craft that, it makes the ore, so I can just tell it if we're below a certain number of gold inside, gold ingots inside the system, we can craft some gold ore up, and it will then process it normally, so we can get a huge potential bonus from our system there, and that will basically ensure that we never run out of gold. The same can't be said for diamonds, unfortunately. If we go to diamond essence, it sort of follows the similar line of the ender pearls, but even worse. It takes 8 to make a diamond. A stack of diamond essence only makes 8 diamonds, which isn't fantastic. We can't recompress this either, or at least it's possible to compress certain ores into, certain items into their ore form. Let me see if I can find it. Don't know if it's here. No, so we can't even do that. It is possible, but as I was saying, it is possible using this, the combiner, to create some ores. We can make copper ore, we can make silver, lead, we can make redstone, we can make some vulcanite, which looks really nethery for some reason. That must stick out like a sore thumb. We can make gold ore, but even if we just look to the redstone, it takes 16 redstone, so we quite probably, even if we could actually, like, compress diamonds back into an ore to process, we wouldn't get sufficient back to deal with it. So we're probably going to have at least one big farm dedicated to the diamond essence. Gonna be a pain, but yeah, worth it in the long run, honestly. And the main issue that I keep having with this farm down here is that if I have less than 9 of a given seed, or actually not even that, less than 10, the system down here runs out of seeds, so a space opens up, and then it usually gets filled with potatoes. So having dedicated farms for given things is going to be a lot more useful. Oh yeah, before I forget, I had to trade a couple of these Affinity tomes. Now, what happens when I have the Ender Affinity is, firstly, water is going to mess me up, but hey, water already messes me up. Firstly, it will make it easier for me, like, my capacity to see at night, like, in just generic dark, it will automatically give me a bit of night vision, so that's pretty cool. At top level, Endermen will not aggro when I look at them. They'll aggro when I hit them, but not when I look at them. And, it'd be really nice if I could make it so that mobs just generically didn't attack me. Like, between the Necromancer's robes, some genes from Advanced Genetics, and this Ender Affinity, I can basically make it so that no one touches me. And that seems like a great idea if I'm going to be a monster. So, anyways, have to consume these. These increase your affinity as you use them. There is absolutely no visual, which is a bit of a pity. And I don't have an Oculus to show you what my affinity is like, unless I go flying all the way back to Dave's, and Dave's place kills my frame rate even without the texture packs on. He likes to say that that's why, but yeah. Let's see, where was I? Oh yes, renewables. So, the next thing that we need to think about with terms of making death protection puppets renewable is we have blaze essence, but that's not actually used for making lava to the best of my recollection. My memory is terrible, so who knows. Use. Blaze rods. Blaze. Nope. You can make fire essence. Fire seeds, like fire generic element. So, I look for that. That can be used to create lava buckets like that, fairly cheaply. But I think we're probably going to go a much easier route of just having a magma crucible and some stuff to go into that, so that it's always making the right stuff that we need. Seems like the smarter idea. And is anyone... yeah? Okay, or is there any... Okay, this is backing up, that's good. There's been a weird thing where if I go and check out, like, if I just, like, stick a few ender pearls in these generators, they'll run for about 20-21 minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll find that there's 0 power in this, at, like, any of these, but for some reason, everything will work for, like, half an hour afterwards. The only way I can explain that is that there must be power in the conduits, but even if I, like, remove all of the... unless I remove the conduit that's directly beneath this energy cell, the power still completely vanishes. So I don't know what's going on there, it's very strange, but more's the weirder. Yeah, that travelling ender, by the way, is just a camera thing. Gar used it to film the time-lapse of his skull a while back. Okay, let's just stick these in here. Did I? No, I didn't have any more cactus green left over. I must have used it all making new Tandis. But yeah, I can make all the dyes that I need, so that's really cool, using the dye essence. And I think I'll probably stick some level emitters around the farms, so that the specifically dedicated farms will turn off when we have enough of a certain thing. So if we have, like, 1,000 diamond essence, the diamond essence farm will turn off. That seems like a smart idea to me. I don't know. Maybe you know better. Ask me in the comments. Okay, so that just gives us one last thing to do, and, well, barring make a Mac to give it all the recipes and such, and that is to turn this system back on. Now, I've got a regulator on here. Now, you basically have two possibilities when you're regulating access to a puppet shelf. The first is you can have one of a given puppet. which is okay, and it will definitely be lighter on your resources, at least in startup, but there are some ridiculously dangerous things around here. So I think having one poppet in a poppet shelf is not going to be sufficient for me to be immortal. Now, with the way that the data values work again, if you put more than one in the regulator, more than one poppet, it will immediately fill the entire thing. So, I don't know why that is. It's probably something to do with data values, but I guess it just won't recognize it, I'm not sure. But it will generically cause it to fill the entire poppet shelf, which, for our purposes, isn't actually much of an issue, because we want as many poppets as we can have. We want to make sure that we are basically immortal. That's the whole point of this machine. Now, you've noticed well, you've probably noticed, I haven't seen the comments yet, because I'm filming this right after the last one. There's a bit of space here, and that's because this is stackable. We can put this right next to each other and it will work just fine. In fact, we could even, like, build it around one interface. It doesn't mind. So next to this, I'm going to be having the armor protection poppets, as well as the tool protection poppets, which isn't a huge issue, but, well, mostly because these guys are both electrical powered, but, you never know, there might be something else I want to use. I had to borrow a bow I got from a skeleton to take down some ghasts, which is why that's there. And this is just a rinky-dink little thing, 403 power, I'm not even sure where it's getting that much, but also ×2 because I've got a single torch on it. This is way smaller than the one we have upstairs. I think the next way to make that one upstairs more powerful is basically to get a dragon egg. So that's going to be fun. A dragon egg or maybe a demon heart, but we'll be talking to the people of hell a bit later. Anyways, as I digress, I continue to ramble and to talk about all of the things. So we're going to have a backlog of taglock hits. We're going to have a backlog in the main ME system, making death protection puppets, spitting it out into here, so, like, by that, good. And now we just need to plunk this, well, we need to basically right-click this, because it's got no filters, just going to pull out anything it has in there. Let's put a few more taglock kits into the system, just so that we can make sure that this works. We have a fair few glass bottles. I don't know what they're doing in the ME system. They're usually over here. Unless I'm forgetting something. Yes, they're in that system because they need to be pumped into the kettle. That's why they're there. Okay, so some bone needles. Very cheap, renewable, again. So, bones from the skeletal essence. Flint is a little bit trickier. I don't really want to be grinding up gunpowder. But we can get it from gravel, of course. And gravel we can make by enriching sand, which we can get from grinding cobblestone and such, or we can just crush cobblestone into it directly in a crusher, so there are ways to make that. So, every step of this is renewable, and we need to make sure of that, so there. Again, we'll have an automated system later to actually do that by itself, but for now, we've got that. So there are 4 in here, which is exactly what we were looking for to happen. That is, there is 1 outputted here, and there is 1 in storage here. We don't have any more poppets, so that's gonna have to stick for now. But let's see if this will work, shall we? Yep. Yeah. Okay, I feel mildly funky, and, hair. What the dick? Nope. Water, nope. Okay, that was special. Oh, blimey, that really clears the sinuses. Huh. I feel... flush? Is that the phrase? I feel warmer. Not saying no to warmer. Warmer is nice. Been in a well long enough, cold isn't exactly friendly to me. Well, that was weird. Okay, right. So we have clipboard. Anti-dev machine running needs the Mac running and connection to all the farms, but it works, which is the thing. I'm not going to test it right now because who knows what will happen after that little incident. Homework review. Yeah, I'm going to walk away from you guys because you guys are like ridiculously noisy, even if you are stunningly fabulous with that top hat. So, the homework review was for 30 Days of Night, and that is a movie that we were focusing on predominantly for how it portrays vampires. Now, the standard vampire that everyone's familiar with is either Twilight, which the less said about the better, absolutely appalling depiction of, like, vampires, and even just by anyone's standards. Like, it would... Generally, when you think of a monster you can be turned into, you think of there must be a downside, or else why isn't everybody doing this? Twilight vampires have no downside. Like, the worst is they sparkle. Okay? Be a model. You're done. But, let's see, what do I need here? I needed essence. Okay. Maybe we can get that. And the other one, the other kind of vampire that people are generally familiar with is the vampires as portrayed by Bram Stoker in Dracula, which are really, really cool stuff. I believe they they were partially inspired by Vlad Tepes, aka Vlad the Impaler. They were also... What am I looking at here? Ender Essence, okay. That's fine, we're cutting out some of this anyways. And they are the extravagant but ghoulish and immortal, and they have a long list of like defects due to their vampiric nature. Ooh, is that a sunrise or a moonrise? That is a sunrise. Full moon. Lovely. So the vampires as they're portrayed inside of 30 Days of Night are a completely... You can see where the stories might come from, but they're very different creatures. They're built to be apex predators. They have huge jaws full of teeth, because these are sharks. They have the dead black eyes, and they don't care what they're looking at. They're callous, they're supreme, they're like lording their superiority over you at basically every single step. They're also based quite a bit more in... By virtue of that, they're a lot more scientific than your typical vampiric depictions. So they're sort of feeding on the old story of the vampire, but they're sort of the monster that this story could have come from. So that's really fantastic. There's a general idea that there's always a nugget of truth in like any given horror story, or any given story in general. Like the oldest stories usually have something in them that made them seem like a smart move. And the vampires inside of 30 Days of Night really embody that nicely. Obviously there's a few leaps, like for example, these things are basically another species. Like, they've been hunting humans for how long? And they spent centuries making sure we didn't think that they actually existed and all sorts, but if you drink their blood, or like if their blood gets into you, then they turn into more of them, which would require a very specialized retrovirus, but I'm not gonna get all sciencey on vampires. But yeah, the vampires in 30 Days of Night, I think in terms of modern depictions of vampires, you know, Twilight, True Blood, that kind of thing, I think it probably ranks in the top. I think 30 Days of Night has some fantastic depictions of vampires, and they're a great example of the monster that is a predator. The monster that is ancient, that is bloodthirsty, and that it will quite probably get you. After all, it's killed thousands before you. Right. Next, homework assignment this week, we will be looking at... We've had a couple of gory ones the past few weeks. I don't know if Machinist really qualifies as gory, but suffice to say. So this week, we have a little bit of a more funny one. We have Undead. Now, this is one that you probably will not have heard of. It was kind of a sleeper hit. The cover here describes it as a cross between Shaun of the Dead and Bad Taste. It was released in 2005. And it is... The focus of our review on this movie is going to be... What do you think the monster is? Because this movie throws a few curveballs. It's predominantly a zombie flick, so of course we'll be focusing on the depiction of them. It's one of the few zombie movies that actually includes a definitive origin of the zombies. You don't see that very often, because it's generally better to say, hey, zombies, let's fight for our lives, but we rarely have time to someone say, hey, this is where that came from. And also, pay good attention to, I believe his name is Marion, the character, because he's just a riot. He's a lot of fun. Like, he takes the stoic action hero that's just, like, living on the fringes and has been preparing for this for who knows how long, really to, like, a fantastic level. But that is it for today. I don't mind knowing what the hell... Yeah, it's probably nothing. Anyway, I have been lying in bed more, and this has been Witch in the Woods. I hope you enjoyed this, I guess, two-parter episode. And I shall catch you all next time.